Hello and welcome to Cultural Apologists React for today, September 4th, 2024. This is an AI-generated podcast and can make mistakes. Use it for generating possible ideas, but don't rely on it as an authoritative guide to the day's news or to the details of cultural apologetics. Benjamin Netanyahu's main rival, Benny Gantz, accused him of prioritizing his own political survival over a ceasefire deal with Hamas, which could have saved the lives of 6 Israeli hostages who were recently murdered in Gaza. Netanyahu insists that Israel must retain control of the Philadelphia corridor along Gaza's border with Egypt, despite warnings that this stance jeopardizes efforts to broker a ceasefire and hostage release deal. Gantz argued that withdrawing from the corridor would not prevent Israel from returning if needed, and called for new elections. The U.S. is reportedly preparing to propose a take-it-or-leave-it deal, but may pull out of the mediation process if it fails. So, how might we think about this story from the standpoint of cultural apologetics? In the midst of escalating tensions in Gaza, a crucial question emerges. What is the true cost of Benjamin Netanyahu's refusal to compromise on the Philadelphia corridor? Through the lens of Guinness's work, I argue that Netanyahu's stance represents a tyranny of the immediate, where short-term political gains are prioritized over long-term peace and human dignity. This approach not only jeopardizes efforts to broker a ceasefire, but also undermines Israel's moral authority in the region. As Guinness notes in his book The Dust of Death, modern society is characterized by a cult of the immediate, which emphasizes the here and now at the expense of the future. In this context, Netanyahu's insistence on retaining control of the Philadelphia corridor can be seen as a prime example of this cult. By prioritizing his own political survival over a potential ceasefire deal, Netanyahu is sacrificing the well-being and safety of both Israeli and Palestinian civilians for the sake of short-term gains. Guinness argues that this kind of thinking is rooted in a flawed understanding of human nature and the role of politics in society. In The Call, he writes, "Politics is not an end in itself. It is a means to an end. The ultimate goal of politics is not power or control, but justice, peace, and the common good." Netanyahu's actions, however, suggest that his primary concern is indeed power and control, rather than the well-being of his people. Moreover, Guinness's concept of the pluralization of truth can help us understand why Netanyahu's stance has become so entrenched. In a pluralized society, different groups and individuals have competing claims to truth, making it increasingly difficult to arrive at a shared understanding of reality. Netanyahu's refusal to compromise on the Philadelphia corridor can be seen as an attempt to impose his own version of truth on the situation, disregarding the perspectives and needs of others. Guinness warns that this kind of approach can lead to a Babel-like scenario, where different groups become isolated from one another and communication breaks down. In the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, this is precisely what has happened. By refusing to engage in meaningful dialogue with Hamas and other Palestinian leaders, Netanyahu is perpetuating a cycle of violence and mistrust that can only be broken through a willingness to listen and compromise. The U.S. proposal for a take-it-or-leave-it deal offers a glimmer of hope in this regard. As Guinness notes in Dining with the Devil, sometimes it takes an outside perspective to bring parties together and facilitate meaningful dialogue. However, if Netanyahu continues to prioritize his own interests over the needs of his people, even this effort may be doomed to fail. Ultimately, the story highlights the need for a more nuanced understanding of politics and power in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. As Guinness so eloquently puts it, politics is not just about winning or losing, it's about living together as human beings. Netanyahu's refusal to compromise on the Philadelphia corridor represents a fundamental failure to grasp this reality, with devastating consequences for both Israelis and Palestinians. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Cultural Apologists React. Be sure to come back tomorrow for a new take on the day's news from the standpoint of Christian cultural apologetics.